This is Imperium, a total Rise of Nations overhaul map that changes many aspects of how the game works and further pushes it to be more competitive. Today, I'm playing Belarus on this map, and my goal is to win the event. But first, we need to take a look at how we do them. This map differs from public servers because it actually ends. Starting in 2025 and lasting until 2044, players will be fighting to secure regions, rankings, populations, all of which are worth points, and the alliance with the most by the end of the game wins. This game is going to require that we play every aspect of our country right, as Belarus is centered right in the middle of Eastern Europe, with Russia to the east, Ukraine to the south, and Poland to the west. So in the pre-game, you can do diplomacy and plan out your game. I immediately notice Russia is a player. Thankfully, I know who this is, so I send an alliance request, and also begin sending technology sharing agreements to all the other players in the server. So now that the game has begun, the first thing I do is increase my government spending all the way. Since there's no laws to do, I go straight to my policies and choose ignore safety regulations and begin constructing 2 electronic factories, 2 fertilizer factories, 2 motor factories, 1 steel, and on the rest of the strategic hubs and capital, I build civilian factories. I take off ignore because that is giving us unnecessary corruption. I begin justifying on Lithuania and Latvia, and notice that Poland is a player. This could be really detrimental for our expansion if they are justifying on the same countries we are. Selling some of the produced goods to the internal market makes us enough money to increase all of our spending laws and drop our taxes to maximize stability gain. I like having it off because I can see better, see the borders better, you can see the units better. So instead of trading with the resource nation, trading with Russia, that way he's making more money. So good teamwork, right?
I'll give you 50 million.
Oh, really? Oh,
yes,
nice.
so I'm going to get the money from the Caucasus.
Thank you. I've waited for my corruption to go all the way down, and now I'm going to put on favor the political elites. Upon taking another look at Poland's allies, I notice they have allied Ukraine. Thankfully, we've secured a strong ally in the east. However, this still means our expansion is going to be heavily confined to just the Baltics in the future. Of course, in competitive settings, you never want to be sitting on green manpower, especially important in the early game, so I always make sure to spawn a bunch of troops every so often. The reason for this is because once you cap all of the manpower you're still gaining, you won't actually be able to see the full benefits of because it's going into the void. I noticed Poland declared war on Slovakia and the Czech Republic. This was relieving because I know justifications are pretty long in the game. That means Poland used his 2 down there, and I don't have to worry about anyone contesting me for Latvia or Lithuania. Russia decides to send me 67 million from his conquest. Thank you, Russia. I've already started building up quite a treasury, so now I decide to build the rest of every factory besides aircraft on all of these strategic hubs to maximize my income. I eventually get around to choosing my first ideology. I know this game, population for me is going to be hard to obtain, and the CSTO type alliance we formed with Russia is right in the center of some major players, so fascism and democracy won't work. I need a way to make enough money and be able to field a decent military. Since socialism and communism are a mix of fascism and democracy, that is my plan for this game. My next targets for expansion are Estonia and Finland. And taking a look at our surroundings, I can tell this will be the last expansion we do in the early to mid game via war. Some time passes, and I notice that Turkey has begun invading Ukraine. This was going to be a huge problem for the CSTO, a problem we need to solve, or we need to attack Turkey. Ukraine not only is required for my formidable Kievan Rus, which would give me cores on a bunch of population, but also the ports in the Black Sea that we could use for a navy in the future. But this wasn't the end of our problems. After declaring war on Finland, I noticed the United Kingdom was also attacking him, yet another major player in the region. The strongest countries in the game were inching closer and closer to our heartlands, almost like NATO expanding further and further east, closer to Russia. But that wasn't it either. There was also an alliance in the east growing between Japan, China, and India. But Russia had managed to obtain an alliance with Japan, so I knew relations were good, at least for now. After some time passes, Turkey invades Poland, and this might be the reason for the next act of diplomacy made. Now that Turkey has a stronger foothold in Europe and doesn't really need Ukraine, Turkey actually offers to sell me Ukraine for good relations in the future. Obviously, if we look at the psychology of this, Turkey must be planning something elsewhere and doesn't want any funny business happening on their eastern border while they're doing whatever they're planning. Of course, I wanted Ukraine, he wanted peace between our two countries. This was a good deal for both parties, but might have some consequences in the future. After buying Ukraine for 1.2 billion and some external conditions saying that I will not attack Turkey unless Russia has a problem with Turkey, we had a deal. Ukraine was mine. However, that wasn't all. Our ally Russia decides to invade the countries of Transnistria and Moldova after this acquisition. So of course, I offered to buy that from him as well. And just like that, I was able to form Kievan Rus and gain cores on quite a bit of population.
Merc, I would like to point out that you're sitting on green manpower.
Appreciate that, man.
Would you like to buy the 200k population that I own from Ukraine and the 50k population from Kaliningrad?
Ooh, oh wait, so not Crimea, right?
Yeah, Crimea is Russian.
Calculate it really quick. And let me tell you all a fact about this map. After the map has been consolidated, the game usually enters a state of Cold War. Of course, it's mostly going to be good players left. These players know war is not beneficial to any of the involved nations, especially long term. And with competitors in the region keeping an eye on opportunities, it's better to stay out of war to avoid possible third parties. It's only near the end game when world tension starts increasing, when massive wars start to break out and sides get chosen. Throughout this entire time, I have been dramatically growing our economy, but internals isn't the only thing we've been focusing on. Russia and I have been putting a ton of pressure on Iran to concede Central Asia and the Caucasus region to the alliance. Of course, this is a major part of the Iranian population and industry. He ends up declining, of course, but future endeavors in the region won't end. While all of that's going on, a war against the UK and America has been started by Turkey and France, both of which are allies. I keep a keen eye on this, but remember, I agreed that I wouldn't have any problems with Turkey, even though this would be a perfect opportunity to third party. I would like to consider myself a man of my word. Obviously, with that being said, that also means we won't be getting third-partied by people in the West. While discussions are happening, something happens that shocks us. Saudi Arabia suddenly decides to invade Iran, so we immediately hop into this against Iran. Of course, we know going all the way in Iran probably isn't in our best interests because of their terrain, and since Saudi Arabia is a really good player and closest to that good terrain, they would be getting all of it. So we instead sue for peace. Russia gets their historical lands, and in exchange, we will instead ally with Iran against Arabia, and then just give Arabia to Iran. And just like that, our first major war begins against Arabia. For now, we will remain alone with no third parties, but this will change in the future. That's really good bombardment right there.
The Soviet spearhead is trying to cut them off in the east.
Yeah, so much pressure on the Levant, we're killing a lot of people. See if we can hold this here. I don't want to move my artillery, but we might. Yeah, a lot of their troops are just defaulting to spawning into the Levant.
He moved his capital to Muscat, sending a naval invasion soon.
Saudi Arabia, that's a country in the game that needs a rebalance for sure. It's like pre-update Mongolia, where their cities were just so spread out you could not take a single one of them without attritioning. I think I have to wait for the bombardment. Oh, they are not getting these two back. Nope, nope. I fought long and hard for these three cities right here. India? Indian-Iranian annexation war. We should be okay. I mean, we got mountains in Afghanistan. We'll be alright. 2 years have passed, and finally, the third party reveals itself. The Chinese-Indian-Japanese alliance. They declare war on Iran, dragging us in, and our focus needs to shift to that front. Japan gets a cheeky invasion off on me, but thankfully we shut it down, and we must begin rebuilding as the factories and important infrastructure was destroyed. For most of this war, it's Iran and Russia dealing with the East, while I keep the pressure on Arabia. That way our southern flank stays under control. It took me quite a while, but the Arabian War was finally going to come to a close with the fall of their capital. Or maybe not a close, but at least disable the Arabians to the point they wouldn't be much of a concern, and we wouldn't need much resources down there. Now that some of my resources have been freed, I launched a naval invasion of Japan. It wasn't a permanent one, but rather something meant to put pressure on them. Looking back on it, and the lack of Japanese defenses, as well as overestimation of their actual army and their mainland, it should have been a larger and much more permanent one, as this would have altered how the endgame played out drastically. I end up retreating out of Japan and then doing an auto capture, taking some Chinese cities. As the end of the game approaches, there is a loud silence as there is no clear victor. Everything seems contested. No one is hegemonic. So after calculating the points and the KD ratio, as that affects it too, the conclusion was reached that Japan, China, and India had won the game with 22.04 points. The CSTO alliance with Iran came in second place with 19.55. A very close game. GG, well played.